Welcome back, all my fight fans, and wow, I've said it before, I'll say it again, you can never judge a card until it happens. I thought last night's night of fights was absolutely terrific. We saw a lot of young prospects win. We saw a couple dominant performances by champions, and I can't wait to break down all the fights for you guys today. As always, I'll go through absolutely everything. So if you guys want to skip to the main event or the main card, I'll have timestamps down below in the descriptions. If you guys like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends to help boost this channel and the algorithm. With that all out of the way, let's get into the breakdown. Kicking us off with the first fight of the night, we had a 19-second KO from Quinlan Skullkilled, sorry, I can never say his name properly, over Anshul Jubli. And some people are saying this was a little bit of a quick stoppage. I can see that for sure, but I think this kid was in trouble. I'm okay with the stoppage. I really feel bad for Indian fans out there. You know, 1.5 billion people in India, and they can't produce one competent UFC fighter. I mean, even Uzbekistan has multiple UFC fighters that are talented. So it's sad to see. I feel bad for the Indian fans out there, but maybe one day they'll get a competent fighter in the UFC, but I don't think it's going to be this kid. His first two fights in the UFC have looked pretty rocky so far. But moving on, we had a welterweight bout between Jonathan Micallef and Kevin Jousset. This was a fantastic fight. I thought Micallef, I'm probably not saying his name right, but he did a fantastic job throughout the entire fight. It was a back-and-forth fight. He was throwing body kicks that sounded like baseball bats. It was insane how loud his kicks were, but this kid's looking incredibly talented as well. I'm excited to see what he does in the welterweight division. So first two fights of the nights, we had two 25-year-olds improve from 7-1 to 8-1. And then for the last fight on the early prelims, we had the fight of the night between Zhu Rong and Kody Steele. This is the first fight that I got wrong in picking. I picked Kody Steele to win this one, but that's only because I looked at Zhu Rong, saw that he had a record of 26-6, and just assumed that he'd be like a 35-year-old veteran or something. I didn't really know much about him. Going into the fight, turns out this kid's 24 years old, and he already has a record of 26-6. So incredible for him to rack up that many fights at that young of an age. I think he's going to be a household name here sometime soon. Will he be one of the top fighters in the lightweight division? I don't know. That's a very, very tough division to crack into the top 15 for, but I'm excited to see what he does in his next fight. So moving on to the regular prelims. Kicking off the regular prelims, we had the corner battle between Ilia Topuria and Alexander Volkanovski. Alexander Volkanovski representing Colby Thicknesse. I think I said Thicknesse in my prediction video. It's pronounced Thickness, apparently, versus Aleksandre Topuria. Obviously, Ilia Topuria's, I believe, older brother, even though he's a little bit smaller than Ilia. A little bit more timid, too. I thought during this fight he had chances to put this guy out. I thought he had chances to dominate even more than he already did. He looked a little bit timid. Maybe he was just getting the jitters off, just coming into the UFC. He wants to be cautious, make sure he doesn't get knocked out or something fluky happen in his first fight. I think he was looking for like a clean KO. It just wasn't really presenting itself. So I thought he had a fantastic performance, though, hitting that suplex at the end of the first round. Almost had him knocked out at multiple points, and Colby is a very, very tough fighter. He was undefeated coming into this fight, so sadly he loses his O, but Topuria moves to 6-1, and I can't wait to see what he does at 135 pounds. Having two Topurias in the UFC is awesome. I know he's his own fighter. I don't want to say that he's always, Ilia's brother. He's his own thing, but they are kind of identical. They're carbon copies when you look at how they fight. And just having two knockout artists like that who can wrestle, who can submit you, it's going to be really fun to watch those guys compete. So awesome fight there in the bantamweight division. Moving on, we had a women's flyweight bout between Wang Cong and Bruna Brasil. This fight was close in the first round. Bruna Brasil was landing some devastating leg kicks that was chopping up Wang Kong's leg, but Wang Cong came back in the second and third, started finding her shots, picking her apart, going to the legs, going to the body, going to the head, mixing up her strikes beautifully. Wang Cong is a high-level kickboxer. I can't wait to see what she does at 125 pounds. Moving on, we had a lightweight bout between Christopher Nolan's son, Tom Nolan, I'm just joking, and Viacheslav Borschev. I picked the guy with the V in his last name, and Yeah, it didn't go well for him. I wasn't watching this fight completely. There's always one fight of the night that I don't fully watch because I'm making food. But this fight looked good from my kitchen, and I'm happy for Tom Nolan to improve to 9-1 now. And yeah, our main fight on the prelims was Jack Jenkins versus Gabriel Santos at featherweight. I thought Santos put on a great performance. I thought he was dominating the fight up until that third round. Not that Jack Jenkins was doing bad. I thought he was fighting really well as well. But then getting that submission in the third round there for Santos is obviously you'd rather have a finish on your resume than a decision, right? So great win for him. Can't wait to see what he does at featherweight. And yeah, a lot of young prospects winning. Topuria's coming up. Wang Cong's looking like an excellent kickboxer for that division. Tom Nolan's looking like a young prospect. So a lot of exciting stuff happened. And people will say, like, oh, the names on this card weren't that big. Like, I wish we had bigger names for a UFC pay-per-view. But you might look back on this card in, 3, 4, 5 years and go, wow, that card was, super stacked. There was, former champions on it and stuff. You never know. I find that all the time when I look back at pay-per-views from 2019, 2018, 2017, and I look at who's on the fight nights sometimes, and I'm like, wow, this was, a super stacked fight night in retrospect. So you never know when cards are going to be stacked, and you always have to judge the fights for what they are. You can never judge a card before it happens. You have to watch the fights for what they are. We saw a quick 19-second KO to kick off the night, and in the main card, too, we had some exciting fights. So let's move on to the main card now. Kicking us off, we had Jake Matthews versus Francisco Prado, and Prado, you should never bet on the 22-year-old to win, especially when he's going up against a veteran like Jake Matthews with 20 fights in the UFC. But Jake Matthews being, I think he's 14-7. That's his record in the UFC. He's one of those fighters I like to call 50-50 fighters. Now, it's not that his record's 50-50. Obviously, 14-7 isn't a 50-50 record. But he's one of those fighters where going into any fight that he gets booked for, it's kind of 50-50 on whether or not he's going to actually win it. You never know with Jake Matthews. I never bet on him because I don't know if I should bet on him or bet against him. And every time I do one, it seems like the other happens. So Jake Matthews pulls out a win here with just veteran quality boxing. He pieced him up the whole night. Francisco Prado had a lot of power, but he's a little bit undersized for the weight class. I would actually like to see him either cut some weight and move down, or just bulk up, get your cardio up, go full on for the welterweight build. But just know that you're going to sacrifice some reach advantage in those fights. And if you can't get around Jake Matthews boxing, it's going to be tough to get around the striking of some of the high-level fighters at 170. So Prado, I don't know. I think he should move down to 155, maybe cut some weight down. Seems like his build, his height and his frame kind of fits the 155 build better, but we'll see. We'll see. The kid's still young. He's only 22 years old. He's got a bright future, I'm sure. Moving on, we had a light heavyweight bout between Jimmy Crute and Rodolfo Bellato. This was the only draw of the night, a rare draw. I don't know which way I would have called this. It was tough because Jimmy Crute had a dominant first round where you could have maybe argued it was a 10-8. I don't think it was. I think it was a 10-9 round. But the last two rounds, the second and third round, that's where Rodolfo kind of took over. He started finding his shots, he started finding his range, and he has so much power in his hands that his shots were really starting to get to Jimmy Crute. His body shots in particular were really starting to slow Jimmy Crute down. And the last few minutes of the third round there, Jimmy Crute had no gas tank left. Now, Bellato also didn't have much of a gas tank left from being dominated in the first round, so it was a little bit of a weird fight that way. I do think the decision was correct. I think calling this a draw is the right way to go when you have a guy who absolutely dominates the first round and a guy who edges out the next two rounds. I think that should be called a draw. I think there should be more draws in the UFC. There's plenty of fights that I see all the time where I'm like, that's too close to decide this guy is for sure the winner or that guy's for sure the winner. So I think judges should pull out the draw cards more often, but it is what it is. I'm sure that fight will get ran back. Usually when fights end in draws, they get rebooked. So I'm sure we'll see those two in there against each other again in short fashion. Next up, we had a heavyweight bout between Justin Tafa and Tallison Teixeira. Again, young prospects, man. Young prospects on this card who are exciting me. You tell me that there's a guy coming up in the heavyweight division who's 25 years old. He's 6'7", an absolute giant. I think the tallest fighter on the roster is 6'7" right now, with between Teixeira and Volkov, right? And he's got 8 knockouts. He's 8-0. 8 of those knockouts are in the first round. He has multiple fights, I think, that are under 30 seconds. This kid is somebody to get excited about at heavyweight. He came out there and just put it on Tafa. He hit him with a couple body knees, got him right up against the cage, hit him with a beautiful elbow, and just started landing punches on him. And Tafa kind of complained about the decision a little bit to call the fight, but there was no saving Tafa there. He was in deep, deep trouble. And Tallison Teixeira, man, that guy could be a huge problem at heavyweight. Now, is he going to face John Jones? No. John Jones probably has one more fight in him. But I think after the John Jones-Aspinall thing gets resolved, Aspinall, Cyril Gane, these top heavyweights are going to be looking at this guy coming up through the rankings like, geez, that guy's terrifying. Will he become champ one day? I don't know. It's hard to pick that stuff. But at 25 years old, 8-0, 8 first-round knockouts, it's hard to build a better career than that, just starting out. So we'll see where he goes. But at 25 years old, he's got a long future at heavyweight. He's not going to hit his prime at heavyweight for almost a decade. So I'm excited to see how this kid turns out in the UFC. That was a very, very impressive performance, knocking out Tafa in 35 seconds. Absolutely spectacular. So moving on to the championship fights. So first up, we have to talk about the co-main event, the women's strawweight title fight between Weili Zhang and Tatiana Suarez. Going into this fight, I was cheering for Suarez. She had beaten cancer. She had 4 years off from the sport during her prime. Really sucked. I thought she should have been champ like 5 years ago. Coming off The Ultimate Fighter, I thought this girl is definitely going to be a champion. I've always been a fan of her. I've always liked her story. She seems like a really genuine, nice person. So going into this fight, I was cheering for her, and it sucked to watch her wilt like that under the absolute dominance and power of Weili Zhang. So the first round, very, very close. I have to give it to Tatiana Suarez because she held top position for most of the round. She didn't do much with it, but we saw in that first round that this girl can take down anybody in this weight class, and she can hold them down. Even Weili Zhang, she was able to hold down for the majority of the first round. Now, Weili, at the end of the round, reversed things, landed a few punches, and I don't think it was enough to steal the round, so I would give the first round to Tatiana, but it was close. Weili, she never gives up. She has a motor on her like I've never seen before. Like, I've never seen this in the women's division before. Even from Valentina, even from Nunes, they didn't have a motor quite like Weili. She's almost like a Marab in that way, where she doesn't stop. She won't quit. She won't back down. She won't take time to breathe or set things up. She's just go, 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 go. And I absolutely love it. It makes for very exciting fights. So second, third, fourth, fifth round, basically we're just all the same story, just getting worse and worse for Tatiana. She's just draining more and more of energy. She splits her knee open, I think in like the third round. I can't remember when exactly it was, but huge gash on her knee. And she's just getting beat up. Weili's hitting her with the better punches on the feet. And when it gets to the ground, she's stuffing more and more takedowns, reversing things on Tatiana, getting top position of her own. And Weili, man, you just got to tip your hat to her. I think, as I'm like the biggest fan of Valentina Shevchenko, but at this point, I kind of have to give the crown of the pound-for-pound best woman on the planet to Weili. Just performances like that are just... Like, I love the way Shevchenko fought Grasso in the third fight. I know a lot of people don't. They find that fight incredibly boring. I totally understand. It definitely was a boring fight, but I thought that was a dominant performance by Valentina. But she didn't really land any damage. She couldn't really get anything going. She had to, strictly play the game of laying on top of Grasso for the whole fight. She got a little bit of damage in there, but not as much as Weili did against Tatiana Suarez, who I think... I don't want to put Grasso down, but I think Tatiana Suarez is a bigger boogeyman than Grasso is. I think Shevchenko would actually struggle to a degree with Suarez just because Suarez is such a great wrestler. But who knows, because Valentina is also a fantastic grappler, and she's amazing on the ground. So it's hard to say, but I would like to see Tatiana go up. She is very big for that weight class. She has a huge build, a huge frame, and I think cutting a little bit less weight, putting a little bit more muscle on. I think she could make a run at the 125-pound belt and maybe achieve her dreams of championship there. But at 115, I don't think anybody's beating Weili. I look at that division, and there's not a single woman in that division that I think has the slightest chance at beating Weili at this point. I know Weili's 35, so she's getting up there in age a little bit, but it's not like there's any young women at 115 that are knocking people out left and right or seem to have any sort of dominance in their game. Everybody seems to be kind of beating each other in almost like a circle. It seems to happen a lot in the women's divisions, unfortunately, but fantastic performance by Weili. All that I want now is for her to face Valentina. As much as I love Val, they're about the same age, 35, 36, I think. But as much as I love Val, that's going to be probably her toughest fight in her career besides the Nunes fights, which Nunes was quite a bit bigger than her. So that's the only reason why I say that. But skill-wise, I think Weili might even edge Nunes. Like, skill-wise, I don't know if there's any women's fighter besides Val that I've ever seen come close to Weili. She has everything. She can take you down. She can reverse position. She can stop takedown. She can get her own takedown. She can submit you. She can knock you out with any limb. She can knock you out with a spinning back fist. Like, she can do absolutely everything. And that's the biggest fight that you can make now in women's MMA. So I hope that's the next fight. I hope it happens sometime this year. Maybe in China. Who knows? But yeah, shout out to Weili. Fantastic performance. My heart breaks for Tatiana, but shout out to Weili. I absolutely love her. The way she was chanting with the crowd at the end of the fight, Aussie, 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 that was fantastic. I absolutely love her. She's such a fun little fighter. And finally, we had the middleweight championship bout between Dricus Du Plessis and Sean Strickland. Now, if you guys watch my prediction video, you guys know that I'm not the biggest fan of Sean Strickland. Don't really like the guy. I don't like him on the mic. I don't really like his fighting style in the cage. So I was happy to watch Dricus beat him up for 5 rounds. It was fantastic. I called this as a 4th round stoppage for Dricus. It got close to that, but that didn't unfortunately happen. Went to a decision, and I think you have to give every round to Dricus. Even though one judge gave a round to Sean, don't know how. I think you have to score this fight completely for Dricus. He looked much improved in this fight. In the first round, he came out with a higher volume than he did before, and the whole fight was just Dricus spamming buttons. People have said this before, that Dricus fights like he has maxed out stats but doesn't know any of the controls, and he fights like that too, man. Like, it felt like the whole night he was just button smashing the UFC 5 game and just like whatever comes out, comes out. Because the kicks, man, the kicks were beautiful, but like, holy, it was like body kick, head kick, another body kick, leg kick, okay, another body kick, another head kick, and it's just like, holy, man, like, do you know that you have a stamina bar and you have to watch for it? Dricus doesn't care about the stamina bar at all. His stamina bar is just infinite. He just keeps going. And the punches, too, every single punch. It's not like Dricus, like, levels a jab out there to like feel. He's like, ugh! Like, he like leans out with every single punch. Everything is just lunging and full power, and it's fun to watch. It's awkward as hell, but it's fun to watch. And he just put it on Sean. He just had a higher volume. And you would think somebody like Sean, who's very measured, very composed, he kind of stays in his Philly shell, and he doesn't exert too much effort to like throw his jab out there or his cross, because everything's centered. Everything's, he's not leaning out with every single punch, throwing it full power like Dricus. You would think that Sean would be able to actually land more volume than Dricus throughout the fight, but that wasn't the case. Sean couldn't get going at all. He had like a couple combos throughout the fight, but that was it. He couldn't get anything going, and that surprised me because, like I said, like, his style is a volume style, whereas Dricus throws everything with full power. You would think that he's a knockout artist, but he's not. Somehow he has a knockout artist style. Like, he fights like Francis Ngannou, but he lands like Dominic Cruz. Like, it's like a volume style, but I don't know. It's weird. It is the weirdest style I've ever seen in my 15 plus years of watching MMA. I've never seen anybody fight like that, but hey, it's successful for him. He kept battering Sean throughout the whole fight. He was hitting spinning back elbows, spinning back fists, and landing them. And then obviously in that fourth round, the damage was starting to rack up, and he turned Sean into a horror film villain. Like, I can't even show the images on screen right now because there's just too much blood. My video will get taken off of YouTube. But he busted that nose open. I mean, he cranked it completely to the side. It looked like Mike Perry in that one fight where he ate that knee. It shattered his nose to the side. But shout out to Sean, man. I got to give people props where they deserve it. To reset your nose mid-round, like mid-fight like that, and to keep fighting, that's pretty tough. I gotta say, that's pretty badass. So shout out to Sean for being able to do that. I think if my nose was snapped to the side like that, I'd be like calling for a timeout or something. Like, hey, like give the guy the TKO. Like, my nose is not in the right direction right now. But yeah, that was wild to see. It's very rare that you see somebody's nose snap like that. And that shows that Dricus does have a lot of power. Like, he's got a lot of power. Just he never seems to be able to find the knockout shot. And I understand that Sean Strickland is very hard to hit. But, man, Dricus, what a weird fighter, man. The volume was just insane. Again, I can't stress it enough. For a guy to throw every single punch with full power, with full conviction, looking like he's going to fall over with every single punch, and to do that for 5 rounds and to outland the other guy is just insane. I don't understand how Dricus Du Plessis, with how you watch him fight, is a volume striker. It doesn't make any sense. But shout out to Dricus, man. He's awesome. He's awesome. And I don't know if he's going to stay champ because his next fight is probably going to be his hardest fight. He's calling out Chimaev immediately because I think Dricus knows. He's a pretty smart guy. Like, in his post-fight interview, he said, like, you know, the reporters were asking him, like, do you want Chimaev or Imavov? Because he just knocked out Izzy last weekend. And Dricus is like, well, who's going to make more money? Like, you guys would rather see Chimaev. I know that, so I'm going to take Chimaev, which is, I think that's totally respectable. Some people might say, well, Imavov just won last weekend, so I want him first because he is an easier fight than Chimaev. But no, Dricus wants the smoke. He wants Chimaev next, and I hope that fight happens very soon. I hope it happens before the second half of this year, ideally. But going into that fight, that's hard to break down because Khamzat does not have that same gas tank. He does not have the same volume or output that Dricus can put out there. And I don't know if he's as strong. I think they're similar in height, but Dricus is, I think he's much more filled out. I think he's a bigger guy. So, but I don't know because the way Khamzat ragdolled Robert Whittaker like that, and I watched that fight, and I just think of the Yoel Romero fights with Robert Whittaker, and I'm like, how the hell was Yoel not able to do what Chimaev did to Whittaker? But what Chimaev did to Whittaker, I have to say, like, if that Chimaev shows up, Dricus is screwed. Dricus is getting choked out in the first round. Like, it's not even going to be a remotely close fight if that Chimaev shows up. It's just, does Chimaev have a gas tank? Some people say that he doesn't because of a couple fights. Like, he gassed a little bit in the Kamaru Usman fight. He didn't look perfect in the Burns fight. But going into those fights, he had some health issues. He wasn't 100%. COVID and stuff like that. So I don't know. I'm not 100% convinced that Chimaev has a bad gas tank. I see his physique. I see the way he works, the way he wrestles. I don't buy it. I think there was some health issues going on there. And I feel like if that guy gets things under control and he's not fighting at 170 where he's cutting like a ridiculous amount of weight, if he stays at middleweight, I think he actually might be able to be a 5-round fighter. Now, is he going to need 5 rounds against most people? Absolutely not. He's going to probably choke people out in the first round in most fights. But we'll see if he's able to do that to Dricus, because the way he manhandled Whittaker and then struggled against Burns just makes me feel like those are two different fighters. Like the Chimaev that showed up to the Burns fight and the Chimaev that showed up to the Whittaker fight, like, physically are completely different fighters. There must have been something going on in that Burns fight. There just has to be, because there's no way you get that resistance from Burns but get zero resistance from Robert Whittaker. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I don't know. You guys can let me know down below in the comments. How do you guys see that fight going? What do you guys want next from Sean Strickland? I think Dricus said in his post-fight interview that he thinks Izzy versus Strickland's next. I think that's a fantastic fight. I thought the first fight was very close. I thought up until the last 50 seconds there, where Sean kind of had his moments, yelling at Izzy, knocking him down a little bit. I think besides that moment, the whole fight was pretty dead even. It was a boring fight, so hopefully the rematch is a little bit more exciting. Hopefully Izzy comes out there with some will to knock that guy out, but I think that could be a fun fight. I also think, well, there's so many great fights to make at 185. Robert Whittaker versus Strickland's a good fight. There's so many good ones. You guys let me know down in the comments. Play matchmaker and let me know what you guys want to see next. I think Valentina versus Weili is the obvious choice for the women. Tatiana, I hope she bounces back, maybe moves up a weight class. And yeah, there's so many prospects that won last night that I'm excited to see what they do next. So many 25, 24-year-olds, like multiple 25-year-old fighters improved their records, whether they were undefeated or just had one loss. They improved to from 7-1 to 8-1, or from 7-0 to 8-0. So it's a good night of fights. I enjoyed it. I'm really, really excited for 313. That's looking like one of the greatest cards of the year. The co-main event, I can't wait to break that one down for you guys. So I'll have a prediction video out for UFC 313 in about a week or so. Like to put these videos out probably a week or two before the fight. So that should be out soon. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, if you guys like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends to help boost this channel and the algorithm. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.